I think still this is a great matchup. I don't want to hear the people bitching about no SEC. It's a compelling game still. There's great storyline still on both sides, and I think it's going to lead to hopefully a great game and an entertaining game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. Right now, the current consensus line has Ohio State 8.5-point favorites. The total sitting at 46 right now, pretty much across the board here in this game. Ohio State offense versus Notre Dame defense. I figure with just the one game, we'll kind of go, both sides of the ball type of analysis. Offense versus defense. Notre Dame has a terrific one-on-one man coverage secondary. Okay, there's no denying that. That's been one of the strengths of the team, and to think they lost one of their top corners, one of their All-Americans in the cornerback spot earlier this season.
Yeah.
And that secondary is still played at a very, very high level. I know Penn State's not got a ton of gifted receivers this year, but I don't care who you play and what their situation is. You hold a team to no receptions, no receiving yards from the wide receiver spot, that's still impressive. And that's obviously what we saw from this Notre Dame defense against Ohio State. So if you're Notre Dame, you're saying to yourself, we know we've got to deal with this explosive passing attack that has sprung to life for Ohio State in the 3 playoff wins. Not so much against Texas, but they were still pretty good in the passing game, and obviously they torched Tennessee and Oregon before that. But we think we've got the pass defense to at least pose a challenge here to Ohio State, to match up and try to, corral Jeremiah Smith, to try to corral Emeka Egbuka, in this passing game. So I think if you're Notre Dame, you're going to say to yourself, we've got the tools to maybe take away Ohio State's strength. Now, the question is, it's not an easy offense to simulate. It's not easy to simulate stopping Jeremiah Smith, who's got everything, the speed, the hands, the route running ability, and that's going to be the challenge here for Notre Dame's defense. But just that side of the ball, that's what stands out to me, is Notre Dame's defense, being able to potentially match up, I should say, against that Ohio State pass attack, which has become explosive. I think when you look at Notre Dame, it's going to get talked about once again. Their defensive line a little bit undersized. Somehow they hung in there and they stopped Georgia from running the football. It wasn't nearly the same thing against Penn State. That Notre Dame defensive front was getting pushed around, for a decent portion of that game. Penn State with 204 total team rushing yards in that game against Notre Dame. So, and Singleton and Allen were able to, both get to in the 80s, as far as receiving yards individually in that game. So does that mean Judkins and Travion Henderson? And that's going to be the interesting debate here for Chip Kelly. I've got this passing attack. That's the part of the offense, C-Mac, that's gotten us to this point, is that we've been attacking the ball vertically down the field, throwing it deep, throwing it to our big-time receivers, cutting Will Howard loose in the passing game. But does Chip Kelly say, even though that's been our MO in these playoffs, we've got potentially a chance to run the football down an undersized deep front for Notre Dame? Do we maybe commit more to the run game than maybe we have in the last 3 victories, Texas, Tennessee, and Oregon, knowing that we might have a size edge up front? And do we run Judkins? Do we run Travion Henderson more? I think that's going to be an interesting, internal debate that Chip Kelly and the offensive coaching staff is going to have. Just your thoughts on Ohio State offense, Notre Dame defense, that matchup, C-Mac.
Yeah, I think they can have success running it on Notre Dame. Do they want to do that, though? Let's just touch on the props in this one. It's just always kind of drove me crazy when there's 2 backs that I know not one's getting carried to take their yards over. We might have talked about it before on here. Same thing in the NFL. So it's like both Judkins and Anderson, I think, could go up. It's like which one might have the bigger game. I think their yards are in this game are both almost about 60 or, just below there, around 58. So, and they didn't have big games. Henderson had the big screen touchdown, right there at the end of the second quarter. But both didn't have great games running it. Texas defense did well. What do they have here? Anderson had 42 on 6 carries, which is all right. He had a 22-yarder, and then Judkins 9 for 36. But they threw it a lot more. In this game, you got to think Smith has got to have a bigger game. Like after he gets just kind of shut down, and they're going to look to stop him again. That's what Texas did. And they kind of took it. You know what? If I go back to it, and his yards were pretty good all year long. Can Tate have more success when them trying to stop those two receivers with this offense? And that's the strength of Notre Dame's defense has been the secondary. The safeties have been great. So maybe another decent game for Tate in this one. Do you have his yards real quick? I have it here. I have it pulled up.
For who?
For Tate, Carnell Tate. I think he's right around 38.
He's the forgotten man because everyone talks about Buka, everyone talks about Jeremiah Smith, but Carnell Tate was.
He could be free here again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I just with them.
I've got
on them or even doubling.
I've got receptions for Carnell Tate 2.5 plus 115. I've got receiving yards for him around 39.5 right now.
Yeah, when I went through the year, it's not like he's just the forgotten guy a little bit with those two, but he was pretty consistent. It seemed like he got over 40 a ton of games. He had a few bad ones, of course, happens with receivers, and a few big ones where he had over 100 yards, but a lot of 50, 58, 45. That could be similar here. It's just there hasn't been a ton of people that have had a lot of success throwing on this Notre Dame defense. So we'll see what Chip Kelly wants to do in this game.
I think it's a big debate because of the fact that our passing game has gotten us this point. Our
I think you got to take shots. I think so.
But Notre Dame's secondary is formidable, and we feel we may have an advantage in the run game versus this Notre Dame defense. It's a great debate, though, and it's really going to be interesting to see how they play it. Are they balanced? Are they split evenly pass run? Do they still say, hey, the passing game's gotten us here? Screw how good this secondary is for Notre Dame. Our guys are just better. They're still going to win their one-on-one matchups? Or do they say, hey, we've got this advantage in the run game. We're going to really skew more to running the football. I can't see them doing that, though, just because of how dynamic their passing game's been. But I know one thing's for sure is we flip it to the other side of the football, CMAC, Notre Dame offense versus Ohio State defense. This is going to be, and I'm sure Marcus Freeman knows this if Ian Cameron does, shorten this game. Long time consuming drives. A lot of short.
Oh, they have to.
Passes.
Can they do that, though? Yeah. It's got to be short and intermediate, and it's got to try to run. I don't know if they're going to be able to run it. It's not going to be easy. Let's just put it that way, I think. But, yeah, that's good. That's the big one in this game, I think. The Notre Dame offense versus this Ohio State front seven.
Because they're going to have to score some points. As great as Notre Dame can be defensively, Penn State still scored 24 against them with 204 rushing yards in particular. And they do have good enough running backs that the run game can work. Those are good backs. Judkins and Henderson. They're
yeah.
So I know the passing game is the strength of Ohio State, especially in these playoffs. And that's certainly going to, and let's say Notre Dame really defends them well, which they're capable. They have a very good coverage secondary, Notre Dame, which I mentioned. Let's say the passing game is kind of neutralized for Ohio State. Doesn't mean Ohio State's going to get shut out because they could just run it right down Notre Dame's throat, similar to what Penn State did, because their running backs are still good enough. And I think we've gotten to the point with Ohio State's offensive line. I've seen more good than bad with, they've still had their center and one of their guards has been injured. And we've talked about they've been a little shorthanded up there. They've clearly overcome it. They've clearly, adjusted. The guys that are back, that are in those positions backing up have done a good enough job. I don't think we can just assume this Ohio State offensive line is a liability anymore because it doesn't look that way. They've played pretty well here.
Well, let's get to the Notre Dame offense. They got their tackles out here, right?
Yes, and that's significant. Yep, that's significant. Yeah. It's an offensive line that obviously has to match up against let's be real. It's an Ohio State defensive line that seems to be playing better and better and better with each passing game going into this national championship. How they got after Texas, it was damn impressive. We know what they did against Oregon. They made Dylan Gabriel and Oregon look ordinary, and that's a difficult offense to face and a difficult offense to make look ordinary. They got after Quinn Ewers. I know he still had the 283 passing yards in that game, but I thought they were good against the run. Only 58 rushing yards. Again, for Texas. Problems running the football in that game with Wisner and Blue combining for just 62 on the ground. And then obviously the sacks, right? They got a couple of sacks there, a lot of TFLs, tackles for loss. Another thing they did a great job of too, and this was constant, they got their hands up. What do they say? The defensive lineman coaches, what do they always say to those guys? If you don't get to the quarterback, get your hands up.
Get it up. Yeah.
Down, pass breakups, pass deflections, and we saw a bunch of that too from Ohio State's defense. So while the offense is getting all the headlines, C-Mac, the improvement of the Ohio State defense, which was already pretty good. Let's be honest, they didn't lose the Michigan game because of the defense. Defense played okay. Not as good as they have in the playoffs, but they weren't terrible in the Michigan loss. But they've taken it to another level. And how does Notre Dame handle that? And my concern is, here in these playoffs, Ohio State against that rush attack of the opposition, Oregon, it was ugly. There was zero, run. And I know they were down big, so they almost had to abandon it. But early in the game, they couldn't run the football against Ohio State. Tennessee did have a little bit of success, 152 rushing yards. But again, a lot of that was, a little bit softer as they had a big lead. Against Texas, Texas couldn't run the football. Counter that, though, and you can say, well, hold on now. Can't we trust Notre Dame to run the football a little bit better than Texas? Because Texas has had issues for a long time now running the football, even against Clemson. And a couple of the other games, the Arizona State game, it was not easy for Texas to get that run game going. So the way I see it is, people, I think, will assume Notre Dame's going to be in tough here, their O-line against Texas or against Ohio State's defensive line. But somehow Riley Leonard's toughness needs to be talked about, because the one thing, he breaks contact. So we've seen teams, hit Riley Leonard for a 3-yard gain, and there he is just bouncing off, and he carries forward and gets another 3-4 yards and turns a 3-yard gain at initial contact into 7 and 8, and that's just the way he's been running. To me, obviously, this is another game where, just like C-Mac going into the Penn State game, of a big deal was made about the health of Jeremiah Love, and I know he was really less than 100%, and he was battling a bit of an illness as well. And certainly he powered through it, did the best he can, 11 carries, 45 rushing yards for Notre Dame against Penn State. To me, it's important to have him as healthy as possible, but it's not a be-all, end-all situation for me, because I actually like their number 2 running back. I like Jadarian Price. I think he's a pretty good running back for Notre Dame in a number 2 spot. So if we have to see a lot of him in this game, I don't think that's going to say, wow, it's a massive drop off. I think he's a very capable back. In fact, there's probably a little more front line, top line speed to Jadarian Price and compared to Jeremiah Love. So, but again, you obviously are going to see probably both backs in action. What I would say is, I know Ohio State shut down the Texas run game, and Notre Dame is going to be a run first offense. Make no mistake about it. The run sets up the pass for Riley Leonard. There's no question. And the thing that I'm interested in is, if I think Texas had issues running the football. We saw it multiple games. So for that reason, I'm not ready to say, wow, Ohio State's run defense, Notre Dame is done here. They're not going to be able to run the football. I think Ohio State benefited from a Texas team that's had issues running it and issues getting push at the point of attack in the run game for a while. I think Notre Dame's going to have a better ability, a better chance to run the football with some degree of success here against Ohio State than Texas did. That's how I see it, because that's not just a one-game thing for Texas, having those issues against Ohio State. They've had issues for that for a while. And if the run game starts to work, it opens things up for the passing game. And the question has always been, can Riley Leonard hit on those passes? Because that's always been the question mark. Can he hit on those downfield throws that open up with the play action and the run game working? Yeah. And to his credit, in the second half, C-Mac, I know he had a couple interceptions. Really bad. But often in the game, he found big-time throws when the run game was starting to work. He found, Anais Williams, Mitchell Evans, Jordan Faison. What a game Jaden Greathouse had, including the big, massive touchdown when the Penn State.
Yeah, he was. I was going to bring him up. I mean, and he had been not even heard from. It was like the last 3 games, because
he's the star. 105 receiving yards for him. Yeah, in that game.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he was phenomenal. 105 receiving yards, and of course the game-tying touchdown right after Penn State had taken the lead in the fourth quarter of that game. I think, yeah, that's where I sit, and I'll throw it to you, C-Mac. Notre Dame offense versus Ohio State. Where I stand, my thought going into this game is don't assume that because Ohio State shut down Texas ground game, they will shut down Notre Dame's run game, because Notre Dame's run game has shown the ability to still work here in the playoffs. I've seen now multiple games from Texas, especially the Arizona State game, especially the Ohio State game, where the run game just flat out didn't fucking work for Texas. And so don't chalk it all up to what Ohio State did against Texas with the run defense. How do you see this matchup?
I mean, it's basically like two top 10s, almost two top 5s. You basically put it. Notre Dame running the ball this year, whatever they had, about 250 yards a game. And then Ohio State's run defense, which was great all year. I think they only gave up 89 yards, that I still think is very good. But this is how Notre Dame, they have to run it. And just let's get to that in this game. So when I go back to the success of Michigan, it kind of worked in their favor. They were able to run it. You know what I mean? They couldn't throw. The defense played great. You mentioned that, but it wasn't 42 carries, a lot, but 172 yards. They kind of kept the chains moving. And that's the biggest thing's going to be like third down in this, but man, it's going to be really, really big, you know, in this game for Notre Dame. They get third and short, fourth and, you know, very, very short. They have to go for it a couple times. Because even when I look back, it's last year. I don't look into a ton of it, but they did play, because I was shocked. I was trying to remember, and I went through that game again. A lot of these guys are in. Of course, the quarterbacks aren't. McCord and Hartman were there, but Henderson, there's a lot of the same skill position on both sides that are in this game. And just like Michigan did, they held the ball 33 minutes to 26 in that game. That's what Notre Dame did. They lost 17-14. And I think this game could be a similar type score, maybe. And there might be a few more points. But Notre Dame in that game, 35 yards they held. Time of possession, 35 minutes to 25 for Ohio State. That's exactly what they have to do. Yeah. Let's see if they can run it, but that's what they want to do. Go up play action and keep them on that offense on the sidelines. But man, can they do that against a great defense in Ohio State? And like I said, I thought they made a ton of errors, whether it's just flags. They didn't play their best, game against Texas, that's the tough sign. And we're still able to get out that win and in the end cover. Even too. So, and I talked about how Texas how Ohio State would shut him down and make Ewers have to beat him. He didn't in the end. He made some big plays. He threw for 280 like you were talking about, but of course the big one in the end, the strip sack and take it to the house was it. So yeah, I think this is the biggest key in the game. Notre Dame's, can they run the ball, this offense, keep Ohio State's offense on the sideline, and can they have success? And that'll shorten the game, and that'll make this game, you're leading what I'm leading to. I know it's true, but it's to the under. It is getting low. And normally in these games, I want to go over lately. We talk about all the time, man. I'm like, I think you got to go over. And that's why I just don't, it's low enough. They know how good these defenses are. And I think a big quarter could just take this over. So that's why I'm like, as of Monday here, yeah, I'm not going to tell you I've ran out and bet the under. But that's what I want to look at when I look at these two teams and at least their defenses, because I think there'll be a mistake or two. Well, and sometimes the mistake leads to a fumble touchdown or pick six. So that, there's points that way too with these teams. But we're talking about that Notre Dame offense. And then Ryan Leonard, gritty. Can he make a big throw or two? We know he's tough as nails. He's going to have, he's going to run it plenty. Kid's just tough. So both these quarterbacks, I got to give it up to him. But we'll see on the other side with Howard. Can he make the big plays in the end? He's kept showing me every week that he has, which I didn't know could be there.
No doubt. And by the way, it's worth noting, these are different teams, different quarterbacks. A lot of things are different with these two teams, but the coaches are the same, Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day.
And like I said, the quarterback, a lot of it's a lot of same. But yeah, I just wanted to go over that game because I remember they did play last year. I remember a close game. It was September. But yeah, just wanted to glance over it.
Well, and what I wanted to get to, C-Mac, is not just last year. They played the year before. as well in Ohio State. It's this will actually be the third straight season they've played. They didn't play in the regular season this year against each other, but each of the last 2 years, Ohio State and Notre Dame have faced each other in the regular season, and both games had exactly 31 points. So that's not even going to sniff an over here in this game, if it lands around that number again in the 30s. So, and yes, 100%. I am totally neutral with the total. Here's what I would say with the total. I think there's going to be great opportunities to bet the total live during the game. Before Notre Dame gets the ball, bet under. Because when Notre Dame gets the ball, they're going to bleed the clock. It's going to be time consuming. They're obviously going to look to be run heavy, short to intermediate passing game, keep Will Howard and that very dynamic Ohio State offense on the sidelines for as long as possible. So before Notre Dame gets the football, bet a live under. Before Ohio State gets the football in this game on the next possession, that might be the time to bet a live over, because they're going to play a little bit faster. There's a little bit more, big play, 20, 30 plus yard, gains are more likely to come from Ohio State in this game than Notre Dame. So that would be my approach, C-Mac, and I think it's a fundamentally sound approach. Before Notre Dame gets the football on their next possession, bet the under live. Before Ohio State gets the football on their next possession, bet the over live. That's kind of my thinking there with the live totals wagering approach and philosophy for this game. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see how this fares out, but that's why these are so great to bet live. Doing the game with Ohio State, it got down to 41. 40.5, and that's when I jumped the over. And I mean, there should have been points. Obviously, Texas looking to tie the game, but and then Ohio State got it anyways, took it to the house. So there's your points, but they got over barely if you took it live. So be ready for the hand, whatever you think might get low enough. Like if this drops, if you think they could get over 34, a number like that, 35, then maybe get on the over. But yeah, Notre Dame's going to want us to run and slow it down, of course. So I look at that. And one thing to touch on too, both these special teams are pretty good, but Notre Dame's been excellent, I think, all year. One of the better, like field position, some of their numbers. So we'll see if that maybe one of these two teams takes advantage of their special teams, and has big plays, because that's always the three facets of the game. I just want to you talked about Gia earlier, very good field goal kicker. So that could be a small little advantage, I think, for Notre Dame in the in the special teams. Maybe not crazy, but
Here, as far as final opinions as of right now, where I stand on this game, I haven't placed a bet side or total yet. What I will say is the bet that I'm likely to get there with the most, the bet that I'm most likely to bet as of right now. I don't know if I want to lay 8.5 with Ohio State. But their team total, once again, is -130 over 27.5. I think they could still get to 28. I think it might be a little bit more difficult for them to do it, especially if Notre Dame is going to limit possessions on offense and play slow, which I know they will. So maybe Ohio State doesn't get as many possessions in this game, make it harder to get to 28 points. But they still have that quick strike ability in the passing game with Howard. And even in the run game, Penn State was getting chunks of yards on the ground at times against Notre Dame's defense, and Judkins and Henderson are capable of doing that. So, and we obviously saw a defensive score from Ohio State against Texas as well. But the fact remains, I think Ohio State can probably still get to 28. It's a question of, will that be enough for them to cover the 8.5, in this game? And I don't want to worry about that. So as of right now, that's probably a bet I will have in this game, especially I cashed with it against Texas. I was on it against Oregon as well, the Ohio State team total over, as well as the full game over in that game, because, don't want to really think about Notre Dame on that offensive side of the football, what they will or won't do in this game against Ohio State's defense. But I think it won't be easy, but I can see Ohio State grinding their way in the fourth quarter to finally getting to that 28-point mark in this game. Because, look, I know Notre Dame beat Penn State, still gave up 24 points. And I keep thinking to myself, if you're giving up 24 points to Penn State last week, you can probably give up 28, which is only 4 points more than that to this, I think, even better, stronger Ohio State offense. So that's where I'm at right now. I think I do like the Buckeyes team total over 27.5 enough to bet that. As far as the spread goes, I'm not as sold on that. This could be 28, 21. It wouldn't shock me totally, because Notre Dame has got guts. That is definitely something they have shown me. They have got some serious guts and fortitude and resilience, and the way they responded to two penalties, wiping out interceptions against Penn State, and how they responded when Penn State just went right down the field and took the lead, and then the Greathouse touchdown on the very next drive, a quick response to tie the game. It's a mentally tough fucking football team. And they've developed a bit of a next man up culture because they lost a couple players to injury in that game. And, obviously, not to mention, let's also salute Steve Peanut Butter Angeli, as they call him, Steve Angeli, the backup quarterback who had to come in when Riley Leonard had to go into the
that was a great
protocol, and he gives them a
drive,
huge field goal drive right before halftime. And without that, maybe they don't come back, because they were getting dominated by Penn State in that first half. It shows to just how much it's a next man up mentality, depth that they have, which is they've clearly got more depth than people thought, because, they've had that next man step up all year for them, both sides of the football. There's a toughness to Notre Dame that, even though there's personnel battles on paper that they lose, and in some cases lose significantly to Ohio State in this game, point spread can't measure heart. Point spread can't measure toughness. Point spread can't measure resilience. And this Notre Dame football team's got it in spades. Enough of it that I'm a little hesitant to lay 8.5 against them, C-Mac.
Yeah, I think they could cover it if they play their top game. But I think Notre Dame's gritty enough. They have to run the ball and take care of the ball. And I think they will be, at least within the touchdown. When I was going through this, and even the numbers when I just looked up, we were talking special teams. Both these teams were good. I mean, top 25. I mean, it's Ohio State, Notre Dame. I just wanted to go through that again. That both have been excellent. So there's a whole lot of that I don't know that gives in this game. I think the little bit of the playmakers maybe come into it, like these receivers like Smith, who just had no game. Texas, that was a great job they took away from him, and they kind of started pinching and bringing a blitz more later. But man, at first they were playing too far back, kind of letting everything down below and across the middle, especially on that first drive. And it was like, you got to get some heat here. You can't sit back with this, just let Ohio State, Howard pick you apart down low. I still, when I look at this total, I look at the under. I think if you want to get on the over, get in the game, in game. Why not? Especially early on, this drops. Jump on it when you think a number's low enough. Definitely do that. And yeah, on the sidewise, as much as I think Ohio State's the best team, I think Notre Dame can hang around. And they can't have like 2 picks again, though.
No.
I don't know if that'll work.
Say that. Do it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's taking care of the ball. It's huge.
That one that he threw, Riley Leonard, it was a terrible one. I don't know what he was looking at, but it was just forced it, and it was just only a Penn State player there. Easy interception. Penn State turns it into points. If you do that against Will Howard, and you put Will Howard in this offense on a short field, you're asking for big trouble in this game, and they're going to make you pay 10 times more, I think, than Penn State for those kind of interceptions. So you don't want those if you're Riley Leonard. You can't have them.
I agree.
No doubt. Just quickly on props, which I haven't locked in any props this early, but I'm going back to Riley Leonard rush attempts, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I know they've adjusted it up to 13.5. I don't think they've adjusted it enough. He's going to run the football a shit ton of times. And you never know how much yardage he's going to pick up. That's why in the Penn State game, I mentioned it. I preferred the rush attempts for Riley Leonard as opposed to the rushing yards. He actually stayed under his rushing yards number. He flew way over his rush attempts, though. He had 18 rush attempts in that game. I think there's still a lot of
that could be similar in this. Like, he could have 18, and like his yards are set below. I mean, what is it at? 37.5, I think, right around there.
The only way this doesn't pass is that this becomes 28-7 Ohio State, and
they have to throw it, which they don't. Well, they can't do that. That's the whole gate we were talking about. They can't get behind and have to start chucking it. That's a big problem. there. Yeah.
Now, that was my favorite Notre Dame prop of their last game against Penn State. By far, it was Riley Leonard over rush attempts. And I feel I'm going to go right back to it here, 13.5. He got 18 in the last. As long as this game's close, he's getting 14 or more rush attempts. It's that simple. There's no doubt because they focus. Him running the football is a huge part of what they do. There's no question. He ran the football more than Jeremiah Love, too. Now, Jeremiah Love might be a little bit healthier, so he's going to get a few.
Oh, yeah.
But
this game him more healthy, you mean? Yeah, more time. Yeah.
Riley's still going to get his. There's no doubt. I'm kind of with C-Mac on this one. I think this, in theory, Jeremiah Smith usually doesn't have 2 games like the one he had against Texas where he's taken out of the picture. And it kind of feels like this is the spot you want to be betting Jeremiah Smith props. But you do have to pay some level of respect to Notre Dame's secondary because their coverage on is exemplary. So maybe it's not going to be good for Jeremiah Smith maybe to get loose.
Maybe look to him instead of his yards. Like maybe take his over reception, whatever that's set at 20 yards. Maybe he just catches one big one here if he doesn't get the full, have a big game in this one. But I think he can make a big play. So maybe look to him there in that regard with the prop.
The thing to watch for with Ohio State, and it comes into play with Carnell Tate, more of the slot receiver type guy for this team. Him and Egbuka would be maybe 2 more likely candidates to maybe do damage because Notre Dame over the middle of the field, that's where their pass defense is not nearly as good. And, we did see 6 receptions, 75 yards out of the tight end for Penn State, Tyler Warren. That's another thing, too. The Notre Dame tight ends, keep an eye on this guy, Mitchell Evans. He might be someone I look at for over receptions and receiving yards. He's their tight end, Mitchell Evans. And after some quiet games, earlier on, against Georgia, he had 3 receptions, 22 yards. He only had 2 receptions, 17 yards. He was targeted 9 times by Riley Leonard against Penn State, 5 receptions, 58 yards. And again, that's something to keep an eye on here against this Ohio State team. And meanwhile, for Ohio State, like I said, when you look at their passing game, Egbuka gets a lot of the focus and Jeremiah Smith. But as C-Mac mentioned, Carnell Tate had 7 receptions, 87 receiving yards, 9 targets against Texas. That's something you want to keep an eye on for sure. He was involved in that attack, no doubt. Again, though, I mentioned how Tyler Warren kind of went off, though, against Notre Dame's defense. Not went off, but he was more productive, certainly than the receivers were. The receivers didn't do anything for Penn State. Most of their passing game and their passing offense was through Tyler Warren. Does that mean, C-Mac, maybe we look at, we factor the strength of this Notre Dame covering outside receivers in their secondary? Does that mean we look at maybe a guy like G. Scott, tight end for Ohio State? Does he maybe have, because G. Scott got a little run for Ohio State against Texas in that game. He got involved a little bit, 5 receptions, 30 yards.
Yeah, he did.
He's their primary tight end. Will Kaczmarek, the transfer, gets some play as well, but mostly it's G. Scott.
I think you look at Scott right around 15.5.
15.5 receiving yards. I think that's a good bet, man, because we saw them give up to the tight end spot, Tyler Warren, the last game. It's harder to make it hay on the outside against this Notre Dame secondary. So where's that passing attack maybe going to be more than you would think for Will Howard? Maybe over the middle. And maybe for that reason, a G. Scott from the tight end spot makes an impact more than you would think. At 15.5, I think you can get over that number, especially given the matchup we're seeing against that Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think look for those guys, especially if they're just going to try to double. It's hard, I think, to hold him down again, and they're going to look to get him the ball just because he's that. You know what I mean? After he has probably the worst game he's ever had, 3 targets, 1 catch, 3 yards. But yeah, I think the Geese got that. Tate, they're all interesting, and how much success though will they have throwing it though? Like is the Notre Dame, this secondary and pass defense so good? Maybe there isn't a ton, or they'll have a little bit more. I love it. Fascinating game. National championship, baby.
That's I think one of the absolute most fascinating matchups, without a single doubt, is this elite Notre Dame secondary against, in the playoffs at least, what has become an elite Ohio State passing attack with elite receivers all over the place. That's a great matchup. If you love football and you love X's and O's and you love individual position group matchups, there's no way you're not fired up for this passing attack of Ohio State and their receivers against this Notre Dame secondary, which has been phenomenal at covering those outside receivers. How do you not love a matchup like that, especially with the national championship on the line? Great stuff. What a breakdown. What an analysis. We went over that with a fine-tooth comb. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us all season long. But make sure you join us now on the basketball side of things because, like I said, we'll be here Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 3 days a week with the college basketball hitting the book show. And we'll see you next on, obviously, tomorrow on Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific with the college basketball hitting the book show. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a million to all of you. We appreciate it. Hit the like button on the way out. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy the college football playoff national championship game. Good luck with all of your bets. And thanks for watching all season long the college football hitting the books show. And for one last time, class dismissed.